I'm Mark Gordon. I retired from Barton in 3 more days. I've been here in Wilson since 1999 and on this property as well. The pile of miscellaneous artworks you see here, this is work that I've started. Some of it's from 1995 before I came, this piece for example. And even 1992, the metal pieces were done in Wisconsin at Kohler Foundry. But most of them were done in Wilson as part of my studio work while I was teaching, mainly ceramics, sculpture, and art education. And so there's a wide variety. The pieces are not arranged in any order whatsoever. Since my studio is becoming empty now, my workshop, which is back in my home workshop, I'm using it for packing because I'll be moving to Spain in the fall, winter of 2020, 2021. And so that building is pretty much empty of my work. And I decided to bring it outside because the future renter said, the space is mine, I can keep my work here forever. So just a few of the pieces. Black eggs, those were part of an installation piece that was at the Wilson Arts Council. And also some of these pieces, which are hollow mold-made eggs, I did in 1997, carried with me cross country twice. These are in the installation piece in the library, in the Hackney Library, under the stairway, on permanent display. The wheel thrown pieces are all in the workshop. We'll look at those later. This, however, is a wall piece. Fragments of 3 different bowls that I broke unintentionally, that broke, and then I melded them together with glaze, a few coats of glaze. So this would be a hanging piece. And here, it's nearby, it's close. This is a wheel thrown piece from April of 2020, so it's very recent, beginning of April. It was a wheel thrown vessel with some additions of clay made in a mold, with a special mix of rough clay and sawdust that I used to attach pieces and give it a rough texture. So this technically is a vessel, it's wheel thrown and hand rolled. This piece is actually one of my favorites. It was in my show at Barton in 2009. It's been in my workshop since then. It's made of some pyramid shapes that I did in rough clay and then attached together to make a wall fragment. The inspiration for this came from 2 things. One, I'll mention the more mundane cause of the piece. I was in Wilmington at a conference in 2000 and saw a cardboard form on top of a shipping pallet that said, "Do not stack." And so it was a perfect pyramid made in cardboard. It was in a back alley, so I took it and made a mold from that shape. So the pyramid shape, of which there are more examples throughout the installation here, throughout the pile, became a form I used over the years. Yet in the artist statement, of course, artists need to think deeply and widely. And I went back into my history in traveling. And in 1984, I was in Egypt, in Cairo, backpacking. I stayed there for 5 weeks. And one day and night, I went to the pyramids, took a 5 lira bus, and slept on one of the pyramids, the middle pyramid. There was a ledge. That was the most mosquito-filled night of my life. And I just remembered that, sleeping on a ledge on the pyramid. And so I put that in the artist statement because it resonates, let's just say that. It wasn't the cause of the piece, but it's related, it resonates. I'd like to say a few words about the process of making the hand-built pieces. And I'm going to point to these three, in which you can see the shape of a squash, butternut squash. One of my favorite things to cast. In 1992, I was teaching at University of Michigan. I was the ceramics professor there for a visiting year. And we had Richard Shaw come to visit. He was a very prominent California artist, is still, who works with molds. And I have not worked with molds much. I didn't like molds. I thought they were cheating. He came and gave a demonstration for which I was the assistant of using butternut squash to make a mold of the squash shape. And it turned out that later I decided to make my own mold using the squash. I had different butternut squash. And so I've cast this in aluminum many times and in clay. You see, this piece has the lower part and the tip of the squash. The sculptures are kind of almost a Lego process where I'm assembling pieces. Of course, instead of having the interlocking pieces that Lego relies upon, I use wet clay. And so many of these sculptures are objects that I saw and decided to copy and assemble together in a rhythm, in a way to repeat the shape consciously. For example, here, this piece is made from a brick that I cast. So I cast a hollow brick in plaster and then repeatedly put clay into that plaster mold and made a series of half bricks. And here's another shape. This is the bottom of a table leg that I cut off and made a mold of. And so these are, I call them stars or brick sphere in this case. For any of these shapes, it's taking an object and repeating it. Something that captures my interest. One of the most interesting pieces, from a distance at least, is this hammer sphere. The hammer itself was one that I had from 1979, and I took a mold from it maybe 15 years ago, and then this piece is glazed with a bronze commercial glaze. But you can see, if you look closely, the repeated patterns of hammers interlocking. And I like that rhythmic feel. One final series I'll talk about for the outside work are these collision pieces. Just colliding right there. This is one piece made from a vessel, another vessel, a horn shape that I made from solid clay. This piece is from ice cube tray and from one of the pyramids. And this shape's from a flower pot I made with a curve. And all these pieces were cemented together and then glazed repeatedly until they became somewhat of a unified whole. Yet, even though they're a unified whole, they show a lot of dynamism, if that's a good word for it, and a lot of movement, and a lot of surprises as well. And the collision series is probably my most difficult series to understand for those who don't know the process. And I'm not sure I know the process either. They're long-term, playful experiments with shapes that I have around. I'd like to show a wall that's my quarantine work. The basics of wheel throwing, which is my vocation in life, my sport, my skill, that I worked on for 45 years plus. It just takes practicing cylinders more than anything. And so, because I'm moving, because my career at Barton is ending, because I am packing and consolidating, the only thing I wanted to make for the last few months has been cylinders. Now, a cylinder is a simple shape. I'll sit down and make about 6 of them. And it's a reflection of a physical process. It's
calcification, but not calcifying, rather making manifest in material, in the clay, what my hands are doing. So the interesting thing for me, not only the discipline of making cylinders and pushing the clay to its limits, or toward its limits, also the surface decoration is something I can experiment with forever. And this is it's been a chance to deepen my process of investigation. For example, this piece was glazed after I put masking tape on. It's called tape resist. And so I put patterns of masking tape of various thicknesses on these tumblers, and then glaze, in this case it's a simple green chrome glaze, and then peel off the masking tape, leaving the bare clay. Or in this case, glazing with white glaze, firing, putting more tape on, and dipping in an orange glaze to resist the pattern, to give a pattern of resist. So that's a resist pattern, and many of these pieces are resist. I love the fact that there's a rhythm that comes into play. I'm looking for one that shows a particular effect. This one sort of does. The green has a tendency to run, so it makes the geometric pattern looser, but also in the interface between glaze and one glaze and another, it gives this wonderful purple. Another type of process I'm experimenting with for the decoration is adding slip or liquid clay after the piece is made. And this is just a blue slip, and I use a squeegee, small, I don't know what they're called, like a turkey baster type tool, to give drips of glue that show up under the glaze. It's called slip trailing. And there are also pieces that are semi-mistakes. Sometimes I keep them. Rarely though. Actually, when the clay's pulled up to its maximum and then I keep pushing it, sometimes it starts to buckle. And some of those I keep. This one's pretty comfortable for a left-handed person. But mainly it's a chance to keep my hands in the clay, to keep moving, to keep experimenting on a small scale. Over my 21 years teaching at Barton, my practice of teaching has been fed by my work, and my work has been fed by my teaching. My sculptural work and ceramic explorations are what really make me any kind of a good teacher, if I'm a good teacher, in the moments that I'm a good teacher. And giving projects to students and seeing their creative solutions and seeing their struggles too reminds me of the stages of creative work and of practice in a discipline. So that helps me keep perspective as well, keep maybe a bit of a beginner's mind, and that helps my creative process. I do have a standing rule that I will not copy a student's idea for 10 years. And I had a high school student named Tom in 1995 who made a mold out of a ping pong ball for his assignment. He just took a ping pong ball and made a plaster mold of it. I have Tom's mold. And Tom's been here. He lives in Asheville. He's in his late 30s now. But I took that mold with me for many moves, and I finally used it in about 2005. And there's no piece here that has the mold, but some of the vessels outside have like a hemisphere, which is not a super original idea necessarily, but I did get directly inspired by his little project. While at Barton, I brought students to see the studio, to see the results of my investigation and research, and in fact the group of the Art League has come, and the art cohort has come to see the studio, just to make sure that they realize that all the faculty in the art department have working lives as well. It's a weekend practice. Helps keep me active and sane. And I'm sure it feeds my teaching in ways I can't even imagine. My post-retirement plans include and focus on a move to Spain. And you see these boxes. I'm in the process of packing. With the new pandemic protocols and lack of protocols around here, we don't know, my wife and I don't know when exactly it is that we'll move. We have tickets for September 18th, and we're not canceling anything just yet. But as you'll see here, we are moving to Calatayud in northeast Spain. There's a view from our apartment there on the park in the center of town. It's a town of 19,000 with a rail station and lots of supermarkets and lots of cafes. I don't yet have a studio space, which is kind of lucky because I need to find one first thing, and now's a good time for me to go, September, I hope. And I'll set up a workshop, probably not quite this size, but it'll be older because the old city has lots of buildings that are semi-abandoned and can be fixed up and used for workshops. So I've packed 100 boxes so far of my stuff. And we'll see how the move goes. The moving company seems to be on board for September. We don't know. This will be a moment to look back on and say, this is what I was thinking today in May. But the move to Spain is a long-term move. Be renting out this space and our house in Wilson. We'll keep it, but I've always wanted to live in a Spanish-speaking country. I'm fluent in Spanish, and I really enjoy interacting in a new language. Not so new for me. And my wife's studying every day. And that's about it. That's the plan. you.